Hello everyone, and welcome to Modernising Student Recruitment, New Strategies for Maximising Engagement and Support, the Times Higher Education webinar in partnership with UniBuddy. The challenges of student recruitment have changed in line with the university's now ongoing digital transformation. Like many other regions, Asia-Pacific institutions are adjusting their strategies and processes to attract a more diverse student body and one that is experiencing unprecedented disruption. At this point, I'd like to bring in Sean O'Dea, University's partnership at UniBuddy, to talk a little bit about how UniBuddy has been supporting universities with this process. Sean, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you for the introduction, Alistair. It's great to virtually meet everyone. Hello to everyone on the panel and to all the attendees today. And to be discussing this topic, which I suppose has become more relevant than some of us would have liked for this stage in the year, but important nonetheless. My name is Sean O'Dea and I'm a University Partnerships Manager here at UniBuddy. I've been working here for about a year and a half, and what I do, I help universities, faculties and colleges actually throughout Asia bring peer-to-peer into their recruitment, admissions and marketing initiatives. I suppose it's at this point it'd be important to introduce UniBuddy a little bit to give some context as to why we're hosting this webinar and why we've partnered with Times Higher Education to bring it to you today. So we essentially exist to help students make better decisions. And we do this by connecting them with your current students and your alumni at the institutions that they're considering so that they can have meaningful messaging conversations throughout the entire recruitment and admissions process about the first-hand experiences or niche topics that are really important to them. In turn, the universities that use this technology, they tend to receive more applications, they'll generate better qualified candidates and end up boosting enrollment alongside developing better intelligence on what their prospective students really want. We came into being about 4.5 years ago, which is when we got our first partners here in London. But we now work with 450 institutions across the world. And it's about this time last year that we started working in Asia. We now have 30 partners across Singapore, Malaysia, one of which I can see on the panel, great to see Azelia, as well as Hong Kong, Japan, and mainland China. And we're the #1 peer-to-peer platform for student recruitment. So that's a little bit about us. I'm glad to have the introduction out of the way, and we can now get into the exciting stuff, the discussion and the details as to what's going on in this space.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Sean. So I'd like to start our discussion today by asking why universities are shifting to student-led engagement to drive recruitment, and what experiences people have had of this at their institution. You know, what have been the positive aspects of it, and what are some of the challenges that persist. Azalea, perhaps we could come to you first. If you tell us this about your institution, please.
Sure. Thank you, Alistair, for the opportunity to speak. I believe that it's not just because of the pandemic that we are shifting towards this strategy, but all in all, in essence, student-led engagement is very powerful in the sense that, for example, for University Technology Petronas itself, over 60% of our students are coming from the word of mouth, you know, the good things that people tell about the institution. So these are generated by our own students telling their own unique story about the institutions, how they feel about the study in universities, and how they feel about, you know, the simple things like accommodation, their day-to-day life, their lifestyle in the university. So it's very important for us to make them, you know, to empower the students to speak their mind. And now is, you know, the day and age where there's no longer we wait and see, but instead we are being proactive towards recruiting students. And in fact, what are the better ways to do this than just letting our current students speak their mind and just, you know, being themselves and telling the stories, engaging with the students. So I believe that part of the engagement as well is to address the incoming inquiries about the university. And the most important thing is the sense of familiarity when it comes to these students that wants to apply to the university. They probably don't want to speak to somebody who's much older than them, but they are, you know, they prefer their peers or, you know, somebody from their age telling them a relatable story. For example, where do you have your late night burgers or snacks? So these are coming from the students themselves. So when they tell these stories, their peers, the ones that are of the same age applying to the university, they can relate. And of course, that is part of the engagement and convincing the students to come on board. So I believe this is a powerful approach to be continued, and I think it will be better enhanced with the availability of the technology such as UniBuddy. Thanks, Alistair.
Thank you, Azalea. Eri, how is student recruitment changing at your institution?
Well, sorry. Okay, so you can hear me, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so actually, lately we are a bit surprised on what is happening, so quick, all coming into of sudden. So therefore, during this pandemic, especially, it is not possible of education fair in person to attend. Yeah, it could no longer be conducted to general application. So therefore, our university had to think differently about all the form of engagement the prospective students. We have candidates from all over the world who individual had urgent and complex questions about how university would operate and what the implication of the pandemic would be of their study plans. So therefore, our effort is to clearly address this through more proactive, providing like frequently asked question or maybe chat box, and then to answer simple and frequent question, maybe individually in each in each faculty. We provide marketing videos tailored to specific subject areas, as well as to provide the virtual campus tours that may be accessed 24/7 to prospective students, that making them actually able to explore the institution or the university at their own pace in their own time zone. Therefore, of course, the availability of this kind of student-led engagement is an increasingly important differentiator for any higher education providers to build students' confidence that the university cares about their well-being, fostering a sense of belonging, and also demonstrating, of course, a vested interest in their future studies.
Great, thank you, Eri. I was wondering if anyone has had increased engagement with their existing student body as a part of this, and has this been a way to talk to your students better about what they require now? I mean, what are the main topics that people are talking to new students about when they talk about engagement? As Elia previously said, it was things that were quite often to do with the social aspect, like housing and the facilities at university. Jessica, are there sort of key issues that you're engaging with students now when you talk about recruitment?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jess. I'm from the District College, Penang. Yeah, I'm the head of student affairs. Basically, when we're talking about engagement, right? So it's not like just belongs to just one person or within the department. It's just the whole of the organization. Whether we come together as one to work hand in hand to understand what our students want, what do they need, and then recently we just actually do a short project with the student. Ask them to design what T-shirt they want for their college-wide in terms of what they think, what is they have in mind, what they want, whether they will wear that T-shirt or not, something like that. Yeah. I hope I answer your question.
Has this been an ongoing process? I mean, has this changed a lot over? Has it been in the past few months, over the past year? What's been the rate of change in terms of how you've changed how you speak to students during the?
Actually, the shifting is actually been rather drastic, because it's going to be like previously in our recruitment, we just think this is what we have, but not now. You see, we have to shift it towards what the students want, what does the student needs in terms of just now Eri mentioned about the sense of belonging, whether they would like to leave this place with something to remember, or the memories, even like an exam hall or something like that.
Okay.
Right.
Wing, I'd like to come to you next, just to ask you a little bit about digital engagement with students and what challenges that presents. When you can't meet with students in person to talk to them about coming to your university, how is it changing how you are talking to prospective students online?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I'm Wing Lam, I'm the Provost at University of Reading, Malaysia. We're a branch campus of the University of Reading in the UK. It's quite interesting, I would say. I think using student ambassadors and using current students to give feedback, that's always been there. But I think with the advent of digital and social media and all these platforms, we have more opportunities to reach out. I would say it's actually another tool for universities to use. So if you look at international student recruitment, generally they can't physically visit your campus because they're at a distance. So I think all of this tool set is additional things that universities can use. I think prospective students are asking about the student experience. So they look at the websites and they see the brochures, but that doesn't necessarily give them a feeling for the actual experience being on campus. So what's it like? How are the lecturers? How's the course run? Those kinds of questions are very important to students. And of course, a lot of our students are asking about job prospects and industry placements. And I think being able to speak to real students is another way in which they can get information and in order to make the right decision. So I think these forms of tools and engagement is very, very important for students. I would say social media as well in general, just students just blogging about their experience at a particular institution. That in itself can be worth its weight in gold, particularly if it's a positive thing. I think some of the dangers around, or not dangers, but some of the risks is that it might, if it's over-engineered, if it's designed by the institution and it's seen as more of a marketing initiative, then I think it will lose some of its authenticity and appeal, because students will just say, hey, this is just another marketing approach that the university is using. So I think the challenge for institutions as well as student bodies is to try and strike a good balance. Yes, the tools are there, but at the end of the day, it's got to be the authentic message. It's got to be students giving their real life opinions about what it's like on campus. We're getting lots of questions now about how is studying online? How is that experience of studying online? And obviously it's very challenging for everyone in the current situation, but different institutions actually deliver their online experience in different ways as well. So even in a campus environment where the physical interactions are different, even in an online setting, there are differences in the way each institution delivers its experience. So I think the tools and using students as ambassadors, that's very important. That is the way student recruitment is happening, particularly international student recruitment. It's just another challenge for institutions to use those tools in the right way so that they really become powerful tools. It's an authentic kind of feedback rather than just another marketing tool.
Great, thank you, Wing. B, I'd like to come to you next if I can. Just to pick up on Wing's point about making sure that the process stays authentic and that you have, genuine interactions with students that they really value. Is that one of the main challenges that you're facing at your institution? I mean, how have you set up the sort of peer-to-peer learning around attracting students and engaging with them on a peer-to-peer level?
You're talking to me, right, Alistair?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm B from the Dean of the Business School in Utah. Okay, I think what we are doing today, I think given the choice of what happened with the pandemic, I guess all of us have to get on board. Whether we started it early or a little bit late is a different matter. I think last year when this thing happened, we all of us just went into all this cyber open day and all the various activities to ensure that the digital platforms enable us to meet up with the students. But at the same time, I agree with Wing on talking about the balance. I think last year when the pandemic was not that bad, we still have students and parents wanting to come to the office. The parents, of course, we allowed them to come, but to make appointment. So I think the gist of it, yes, we also continue with all these students and alumni and ambassadors sharing their experiences because of the pandemic and all these various their journeys. We have international students sharing with us their journey as students to the university. So all this, I think, is relevant to the student, to the context of it. But I think we should not lose sight of it, because there are still some students who wish to talk to still, or even the parents, especially the parents. So we end up even getting some webinars, we involve the parents in. So that kind of make it like a real life history or life events for this online and recruitment, engaging all the various stakeholders. So I think to sum up that is challenging, but it's something that we cannot do without. And this thing will be continuously, I think, being used by all of us. I think especially with the younger generation and all these key influencers and the social media, we do have to continue with that. But at the same time, physically, where the operations is concerned, I think there's still a need for this face-to-face interaction when it comes for special students and parents. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's excuse me. It's interesting to talk about not losing sight of still needing to interact with people other than the students themselves as part of the process. So part of some of the older processes still remain in place, but they have to change as well with the shift to online. Sean, I was wondering if we could come to you next, just so you could perhaps tell us a little bit about the initiatives at your institution as a way to engage with students early, give them the information that they need, tick all of the boxes that Bea and Wing are talking about here.
Yeah, so thanks. One of the things that, we've been steadily, so let me give a little background. Sean Ferguson, Associate Dean at the Asia School of Business. We're a partnership with MIT Sloan and the Central Bank of Malaysia. We're about 6 years old. And we've been really scaling up our digital marketing efforts, right? And so, through segmented email campaigns, a lot of social media, that kind of thing. And as those became more effective, we had this thing called a schedule a call that we also had as part of the campaign, where prospects could respond and engage and set up times with our admissions staff, et cetera. And through the effectiveness of our other digital efforts, that channel started to get overwhelmed, right? And a lot of times, people might schedule a call with one counselor and another counselor, and they're kind of asking the same kind of questions. And then what we noticed is that we would also be referring them to talk to students or alums. And so when we saw UniBuddy, we realized that could be a great complementary tool to kind of lessen the bandwidth, maybe focus, make our admissions process more inclusive, so that you've incorporated students and alums into it to give that real world perspective. But then also maybe shifting some of the workload from our admissions team to maybe even higher value add activities than just the early stage prospecting. And it's been super productive for us, as far as balancing kind of our human interaction, giving us more human hours to kind of distribute across, a broader set of the community. The other thing that's been great is that I think candidates have been more informed, right? And so they've been able to make better decisions about us and have a better appreciation of the value that we provide. And so I think that's drove our ability to drive down scholarship, because there's more certainty around our value proposition, and they've been able to see it from multiple dimensions. The other thing, and where this kind of continues to feed into the digital marketing apparatus that we have, with the systemic nature of UniBuddy, we're able to glean insights on the topics, the questions, and things that are most interesting to the market. And we're able to take those insights and feed that into our content development machine and create articles or subject matter pieces that relate more to the market and what they want to hear or better understand. And so, we have this kind of content catalog, pipeline our goal is to put out one piece of content every week, right? And what UniBuddy allows us to do is see if there's anything that's missing from our pipeline based on the kind of questions that people are asking and the types of engagement that they're having, or do we need to bring up something from a priority standpoint? And so that's how it's been a really powerful tool and super complementary of our other digital marketing efforts.
Great, thank you, Sean. I'd like to come to you next to ask about whether processes like the ones we're discussing today have the potential to help you reach different types of students and engage with sort of different cohorts who you perhaps may not have been able to reach before using traditional methods.
Yeah. I was just nodding my head listening to Sean, because these are some of the things that resonate with what we believe in, which is the importance of having data and understanding the demographic that we're trying to get. So I'm from Sunban, Sarawak. We are a branch campus. Our main campus is in Melbourne. So we are partly owned by the state government. And because of this, there is a vision by the state which requires us to reach to a certain demographic, also an initiative where we want to be more inclusive in terms of the education. So in order to get to that particular socioeconomic status group, we need to know what are their needs. What do they think will be their ROI if they're, enter the university? So yes, understanding this kind of information and knowing what is needed, other than looking through the list of the critical occupation list every year that's posted out, we need to know what they want. And again, because this generation is Generation Z, they really want things that are curated, personalized. I mean, just simply looking at their Spotify list, they want things that are curated to what they want. When they do this, I want internship, I want work integrated learning. So they're very specific in terms of what they want. So having that kind of information and having it very accessible to us as institutions would be really, really useful. Yes. Yeah, to answer your question.
Great, thank you. Sean O'Deek from UniBuddy. Sorry, there are two Seans now, so I have to.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right. No, you're both very welcome. It's okay. Sean, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how UniBuddy's working in order to help universities broaden out the tools that at their disposal once they have identified the type of students that they want to engage with, as Ida and Sean also mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great to hear all these kind of points being discussed, and especially around the usage of data and being inclusive, and the realization of your current students being a huge asset when it comes to engaging with all of your prospective students. Just a few statistics off the top of my head that I know from surveys that we're often kind of referring to is when we're looking at the importance of real experiences. We see that 84% of students are now actually using social media at some point in their higher education research. So as they're going through perhaps your web pages, which obviously you put a lot of effort into, because that's typically the landing page where you'll have all of your prospective students getting their information. They're also looking at all of your social media and the social media of your current students or even your alumni. So making sure that you kind of have call to actions, which more often than not, a lot of our partners will use UniBuddy as a tool. So whilst they're promoting what student life looks like at their institution, there'll also be the call to actions directly from an Instagram story or a TikTok video to speak to a current student. Alongside that, obviously, using virtual events to engage your prospective students and including a way for them to engage with your student ambassadors like they would at the old-fashioned in-person recruitment fairs, which I hope we can all remember. You would try to make sure you have some of your current students there to kind of expand on their current experiences. So just putting them on those kind of digital platforms. And then, yeah, I mean, one other thing I'd like to note really about the creation of belonging. One of the data points that we found from a recent survey done by QS, they found that 74% of prospective students would actually prefer to speak to a current student rather than a member of staff. And I think that relates to a lot of the points that some of the speakers have mentioned earlier. I just wanted to kind of make sure that everyone knows that there is actually some data behind this, and it is something that students are looking for.
Great, thanks, Sean. We'll forgive you mentioning THE's competition as well. So.
Sorry, Alistair.
That's okay. One thing I wanted to ask, just a quick follow-up question about UniBuddy in particular, is the UniBuddy Live platform and how that has different functionality. But one of it is to host guest lecturers, so you can sort of manage student expectations in terms of what course content is going to look like. Do you think that's something that's going to become more important going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something with the events. That's something that's kind of everyone's kind of put what they used to do in person onto a virtual platform, but with that's kind of given opportunity to include more people in these events, such as your members of faculty who could engage students in perhaps undersubscribed courses. You could actually get a member of faculty to explain what the course entails, perhaps give a taster lecture, and we're seeing that happen more and more often. And UniBuddy actually now provides an events platform. Last year, we hosted over 9,000 events, and the usage, as you can imagine, is kind of skyrocketed more than 900% on the year before. But yeah, no, I think a really good a way for universities to kind of promote themselves in alternative ways is actually to give their prospective students access to members of faculty who otherwise wouldn't have been able to attend the international events, especially.
Great, thank you, Sean. Shuing and Angus, you're both senior lecturers at your respective universities. I wonder if I could come to you in turn just to ask you a little bit about how expectations are changing from new students in terms of course content, and whether it's useful to be able to manage those expectations the way that Sean is describing by perhaps giving students a taste of what a lecture looks like before they come to a university.
Yes, hi, I'm Sui Ying, head of school at Swinburne Sarawak. Yeah. So to answer your question, Alistair, yes, we actually, our recruitment team actually looking into the various marketing and recruitment strategies, inclusive of social media. So one of the way that they are actually looking into is we would like the students to experience in advance how our lecture online. So we give them like, okay, you can come and join us for the first few sessions and have a feel of how we actually conduct these online classes, and then getting to know them as well and getting their feedback whether they would like to continue with us. So that is one of the activity that we can do actually to get on board hopefully the prospective students. Yes, and just to add on the other thing, just now we mentioned about these virtual events, and we do also expose our high school students to various virtual events organized by Swinburne Sarawak. So one of the annual event that we actually organize for the high school students is our annual debates, which involve prospective students from various high schools throughout the whole Malaysia. So yeah, even from Indonesia as well. So I think virtual events to reach out to the students would be something for us to think about. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Angus, what's this engagement looking like at Hong Kong Baptist University?
Yes, I think we went through a steep learning curve here in Hong Kong because we used to do things face to face. You can imagine the size is very small. So, you get close engagement with students before this COVID-19 issue. So when we go digital, it was a huge learning curve. But there's a few points I want to point out that the students, even before digital, go into when recruitment is that they don't only just ask for internship, they ask for employability. They look at the things. So apart from they want to enjoy life and what's the college life is like, I think younger generations are also, certain groups are very sharp and, they really know what they want. And so they look at employability. So what I used to do as a program director was that I put students into networks with professional bodies. And I then, some of the students immediately got job offers at these networks occasions with professional bodies because they see potential employers. So we also have task force on employability, on research teaching nexus, and now I'm convening a task force on online and blended learning. And so this is a huge difference. And the online kind of virtual day, I guess the format has to change for most universities because you got employers you got teachers talking and then giving a presentation. which you can imagine for Generation Z, that's very boring. They just want bullet points. They want to see how they're going to enjoy their study, how they're going to study, how they're going to learn, because learning for them is different. So we're rethinking that from the bottom up and see whether the new generation, the digital generation, have changed your learning, and therefore then also present our degrees in such a way that says, okay, these are 6 reasons why you should study here, or 4 reasons you should study here, instead of, you know, a lot of words, a lot of pictures. And we've seen so many institutions use videos of other students on campus and at work. I think, although that's great, but because everybody's doing it, so there's no advantage anymore. So I guess that's a challenge where which institution starts something new, everybody takes on the same thing, and it turns into something normal, and it loses the edge. So universities really got to ask yourself, you know, some pair down questions: is what is this program attractive? Why are you doing it? Who are you doing it for? And how you connect to the real world. I guess, you know, the connection to the real world is now the new in thing. Even though some of the generations that are very young, as one of the speakers mentioned, the parents come into there. So we actually have to, you know, have communicate with the parents. So the parents want something traditional. The younger generation wants something innovative and creative. So we have to take a balance there.
Okay, thanks, Angus. I think that poses some interesting questions too to your points about improving employability, as to how over the longer term things like lifelong learning and upskilling and reskilling will mean that you're not just communicating with Generation Z students in future. There will also be different types of students coming in who will also want to know about employability, but perhaps, as you mentioned, you will have to communicate with those people in slightly different ways because they're of a different generation.
If I could add a little bit, I spend a lot of time now engaging with potential employers, professional associations. I sit on some of the committees. So I'm spending much more time getting close to the jobs which students were getting at. So I can tell students, well, I spoke to employer, this is what they look at. So let's do this assignment, because what you're going to use this assignment in your interview. So I had students telling me after class, when they got the jobs and after graduate, that they literally got a job because one of the assignments I set was really close to industry, and they spoke about it and they passed the tick and they got the job. So it was very surprising to me, but that's the trend I'm taking on.
And these presumably then potentially create case studies that you can use and move up to the front of your communications with new students, so they can see concrete examples of how it meets their need in terms of getting, you know, employability through taking a certain course.
Oh yeah, and they look at things like not just one job. I have to tell them, you know, I've got this class, the spreads of job, the types of jobs. So they want to go for options. So they say, okay, what happens if halfway I study this, I get a bit bored? I say, don't worry, because we have graduates looking at that job after graduation. And that kind of changed the conversation a little bit, having them more interested, because traditional degrees, having one degree heading for one job, I think that's something of the past, because new research shows that in their lifetime, they'll change 4 to 5 different careers. And so transporting the skills or transferability of the skills is important. Moving from one job to another career to another different sector is important. So they want to know all the flexibility and all the possibilities. So I guess for us as educator, we have to get creative too. We have to fix our product to start off with, okay? No, the gimmicks of marketing could work only so far. You have to fix the degrees first before you then launch out and says, this is what you have, because everybody have chocolate vanilla degrees. Everybody have the same thing. It looks similar. And so you have to come up with something similar, because there are some basic skills, but something different too.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Eri, if we can come to you next, and then Azalea after that, please. I think you're on mute, Eri.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Well, I cannot agree more, and what Angus just said. I think we are totally educating or trying to educate the different generation. We are not longer, teaching during the era of Henry Ford's when famous quotes that any customer can have a car painted any color that he wants, so long as it is black. It's a mass production. Yeah, so that no, we are in the mass or in the mass customization of education. So therefore, what is said by Angus just now is very, very true. When we have to sort of personalize the learning process, the key of successful in digital platform which come together with this pandemic in higher education is to understanding the understanding of makeup of a group of audience or cohort, and try to identify the key personas and what motivates them, that will help you to design and execute the strategy that hits audience that specific needs. They will believe more into influencer, to YouTuber, rather than listening to you. Believe you me. So therefore, I think you will be able to target precisely what is prospective student would like to experience, then construct the messaging that drives engagement that will lead to an enrollment. Because at the end of the day, we would like them to enroll to our course, to our university. But then if they don't believe that at the end of this process, you cannot promise me promise anything, they may as well, after looking into that, then they will drop off and go for another course. So as I mentioned, the personalized learning that is in the future is like addressing something what we call now is a micro credential, so that people will put something from each university that end up with the degree from maybe from Hong Kong University, but they are somewhere in Zambia maybe. So therefore, we have to address the future rather than looking backward, that what is happening in the past then become our guide to the future is totally wrong. What happened now when we're trying to migrate to online teaching, we bring our set of scenarios still in the face-to-face mode. So therefore, the people or your student will go into a tactic, a strategy that will use unconventional way of teaching. Of cheating. Yeah. So this is actually our challenge in the near future. Alistair, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Sorry, Azalea, if I come to you next and then B after that, please.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just very interested with what Angus said. It's about our offerings, making them attractive, and I think we need to be more flexible in our offerings with this day and age. You cannot just be rigid, saying that this is what we offered, but not thinking about how the market behaves. A study published by QS earlier this year said that 47% of the student wants to defer their studies, and over 60% wanted a hybrid mode kind of study. So how is our role as an organization fit into this study, and how do we behave? Do we react to the market study and act accordingly? We need to provide options to our applicants that will give them a better sense of choosing the organization which fits their purpose. And digital space now is too crowded. You talk about social media, you talk about I don't know how many TikToks and whatsoever. It's so crowded, and just to stand out in the digital space is a challenge for itself. So yeah, we talk about striking a balance. When we want to modernize the approach, we also need to think about the behavior of the market, and that needs to also be part of how we craft our strategies. Thank you.
Thank you. B, would you like to add to that?
Okay, I think I may be looking at some of the pointers that you have in your agenda in terms of future-proofing the admission. I think it's not just a matter of future-proofing the admission through this digital, but I think in the long run, as educators, we should be looking at future-proofing our graduates, that when they come out, they are able to face the challenge of what the future in terms of, for just now, Angus was talking about professional bodies, yes, I think all this, we can't run away in terms of constant and close collaboration with the industry. Of course, we are also aware of this internationalization that is required out of most all higher education institutions. So it's just not the entry point that we should be looking at, but also to ensure that this foolproofing goes all the way to the exit point. So that is where we can get those students coming back to our alumni, and they are the one who will be our ambassadors, and also to share, not necessarily through our web, but word of mouth in their own space, in their own environment. So I think again, it comes back really down back to the university strategy. I think all of us come from different backgrounds. The way that our university was set up in terms of vision and mission And of course, in terms of the how deep our pockets are, the budgets that we have, we may not be able to get it right as early as possible. But I think by the end of the day, it is really coming back to our core products and our services. So once you bring this up to the next level into the in the cloud space, I think we should continue to ensure the back end, entry and exit point it continues to have this quality improvement. I think that's a challenge. As much as we are talking about just recruitment right now, we forget that they will be exiting one day, and they will be the one that going out, be our spokesperson, they are the one that carrying our brand. So by the end of the day, this branding exercise and all this social media, it all comes back together to let us know then we have the challenge of segmenting and profiling, so which is most important for who and when. So it is a very, what we are talking today is really very, a very philosophical thing in terms of and going on board with modernizing the recruitment mechanism. But at the end of the day, we still have to come back and get ourselves grounded. We are here as educators also, not to forget that. So thank you. That's all, Alistair.
No, that's great. You actually hit upon a point that I wanted to bring up next, which is perhaps if I come to Sean from UniBuddy to talk a little bit about alumni engagement and how that's changing, which I think is really the broader point that we struck upon there. I mean, UniBuddy has more than 30 partners across Asia, so you have presumably quite a broad look of how attitudes are changing within the region. Are you seeing, in general, a trend towards more attention being paid to alumni engagement, so you can achieve some of the stuff that B is talking about in terms of carrying on the conversation with your students once they leave, so they can be ambassadors for your university?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, we especially see this for the postgraduate courses, and that's pretty much down to that. I suppose return on investment that students are looking for when they're going to spend a year of perhaps their professional life. They could spend in work, they could spend at another institution, they may even have to move their family. They also don't want to speak to someone who's currently studying it. They want to speak to someone who's gone through the whole process and has come out in a better position, they expect, than where they started. So just a few statistics off the top of my head. I know that we recently did a case study with the Hong Kong Baptist University Business School, and they found that 20% of their enrolled students for the taught postgraduate programs actually spoke to either a student ambassador or an alumni at some point in the admissions journey. It's becoming really important for them. 1 in 5 students are engaging with these conversations. But as well as that, I mean, I know a lot of institutions often are worried about how do they get alumni on board? How do we engage our alumni to give some time perhaps to share their stories, to speak to prospective students or even current students? But I think that the thing worth noting is these students can look back on their own experiences. When they were going through this process themselves, probably one of the most useful tools that they could have accessed was engaging with someone who's already doing it or come out the other side. And so they'd be more than happy to do that for the institution. If they're happy with the course and happy with the outcomes, they'll enable those kind of prospective students or even their current students who are graduating soon. And as well as that, I know a lot of institutions, I can tell from my own experience, they're always kind of asking us for donations or other kind of financial give backs, I suppose, to our institution. For me right now, I'd much prefer to share my experience with any prospective student considering what I did and talking to me about what I'm doing now. Perhaps in a few more years, I might be able to give back in the way that the university first asked me to. But like I think Angus said earlier, our experiences are kind of worth our weight in gold if you can kind of if you can kind of access them properly and enable those prospective students to use it.
Brilliant, thanks, Sean. I'd like to go to one of the questions you've got from the panel. I mean, it's worth mentioning you've got nearly 200 people in the audience today, so thank you all very much for joining us, and we will try and answer some more of the questions in the last 5 or 10 minutes that we have. But Farahman asks, to any panelists, do you agree that we need to differentiate our approach to our potential students, whereby we know that we have 2 major groups, i.e. the undergraduate and the postgraduate? So I was wondering if anyone would like to, Sean, sorry, Angus, rather, I see you nodding, if you'd like to speak about that.
I think the answer is absolutely yes, because you've got two different groups of students. Some undergraduates, the pre-experienced ones, are looking, to do a master's to get a job. The post-experience and those who have experience may be switching to a different job or wanting a promotion. So it's very different from undergraduates, and undergraduates is just figuring out what they want to do. And I told students that, for the undergraduate, this is the first degree you're doing, it's not your last, because for you to last a lifetime, you need a couple of degrees because you've been changing so many careers. You need more qualifications shows that you have the skills. So absolutely differentiate your markets. Even within your master's, the targeting is important. Choose wisely the group, and then how you also align your product with the industry bodies, with the students, are very important.
Great, thank you, Angus. I saw you nodding in agreement. Does this partly relate to your previous point about needing to reach different types of students a different way? You can do that with undergraduate degrees and also postgraduate offerings.
Yeah. So I'm the head of school for School of Design and Arts. So we have postgraduate and undergraduate programs. So just to take an example from the Bachelor's of Design. So what we have is we have undergrads who are perhaps some of them are very sure in terms of what they want to do once they graduate, and some are still searching. So we do offer that kind of flexibility. So when we do talk to them, we said, look, you can take the social media major, but you can also add a design on top of that. So when you do leave, you are able these kinds of jobs. However, if you're dealing with postgraduates, potential postgraduates, often this is things as in timetable about, okay, not just how would this benefit you in the long run for your current career, or what your new career will be. So it definitely has to differ based on these different cohorts. And this applies to pre-university students as well, which Su Ying looks after in Swinburne. So how we talk to them and who we talk to, especially for pre-U students, it will be predominantly parents if you're talking in the Malaysian context. So yeah, the approach definitely has to be very curated to this demographic. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Azalea, is this something that you're seeing emerging at your institution in terms of targeting the different groups in the way that Ida talks about?
Yeah, it is definitely. I think I agree with both Angus and Ida, even for the fact that what Angus said, even within the same level itself, for example, masters, you have so many programs, and it's very good for you to just have a target group. And how do you do this is basically you get from your data. So your historical data is very important. What people talk about on social media, what they have conversations with the alumni and the current students. It gives us a sense of what people want and who do you target to and what kind of channels that you want them to be on. For example, working professionals might not be on Facebook nowadays. Parents are usually on Facebook doing decision for their students, for undergraduates. But for working people, they like Twitter because it's, quick to get the words out. It's short and sweet, So knowing this sort of information is also vital, besides categorizing or personalizing your approach. So get your data in line and you can start to better curate and customize your approach from these study levels. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Celia. Another question you've had from the audience is, how do we attract students who are interested in open distance learning programs in universities? These are mostly mature working adults. Are there any examples people can think of at their institutions where they are now looking at making sort of permanent exclusive distance learning programs available? And if they are, what has the engagement looked like in order to try and onboard students about that? Azalea, sorry, I don't know if you were. I'm sorry, I don't know if you were nodding or just moving on camera, but I was wondering if you were. Are you having any of those conversations about distance learning and creating more opportunities for students so that they can be acquired and come in a slightly different way?
Yeah, I can start, and I think my colleagues also have some also ideas. But I think for ourselves in UTP, we have started with the master's program for online distance learning, and these are the target audience that we want from working professionals who are not able to travel due to their work, and they are able to get their degrees or master degrees from the comfort of their home or even where they work. So what we do is basically have a very targeted engagements with our industry partners and our collaborators, and basically engage the agenda of having staff development within the institutions or the organizations, and promote them with the opportunities that we have in terms of online distance learning. But we also need to take into account, if we want to expand this to the undergraduate level, the accessibility of the internet is also very crucial to talk about. So probably for working adults, it's not so much of a concern, but if we were to go into, undergraduates, we need to think about the accessibility of the internet as well. So, Ari, I think you have something to add on. Thank you, Alistair.
Okay, thank you. So go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, very interesting that you mentioned about distance learning. Actually, we are all 99% are doing distance learning for this 3 semester already, meaning to say that we are doing it online. So with this fact that actually we are addressing the future already. What I'm going to say here is actually when we are in a new situation, a disruption to our teaching, normal teaching and learning, we have to bring a new way of thinking outside of the framework that we are used to have. When we are asking our graduate, for instance, this graduate as ambassador will never have the experience of passing semester online, fully online, never. So they are still under conventional way. So therefore, when we are asking somebody, is somebody that could provide, if I make the extreme cases, is that somebody that provide a work opportunity for them enough. I think if I become a new intake of a university or program, I will see what is the end of this cycle. Do I have a job, or I will have to apply everywhere to get a job? And then that question, that very question, need to be addressed, I think, for the future recruitment. Not necessarily with glamour thing. Of course, there will be some people that very good at fundamental. They would like to become a scientist. Then there will be separate. But the new generation, Generation Z, will just want to know, will I be rich at the end of this? Something like that, to the extreme. If you don't believe that, then you will fail to address that. I would like to ask if any of you are successfully, recruit students during this pandemic. Will be very interesting. So therefore, I would like just to do a wake-up call for everybody that doing in this education world to realize that there will be a game changer. There will be a new set of scenario altogether, and it will be wrong if we are still left our framework of thinking with the bachelor degree, master degree, PhD, conventional way. Then we are yet to address the future. Sorry that I want to provoke everyone.
No, it's fine. No, I think it's important. I mean, like you say, you're talking about 2 things, I guess. One is the different types of courses that will need to become available, and also just how more competitive it's becoming for student acquisition around the world.
Just want to make one more point. If will it be wrong if we like to see somebody with culinary and then would like to learn about IoT, for instance? So these are too extreme, So that's actually what is happening in the near future, I think. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Angus, we'll come to you next.
Yes, I totally agree about the point that the delivery and the type of future degrees. Now, I think for the online, we're still not having, at Baptist U, we haven't got into that yet. But what convening a panel, I've noticed a task force here, the business school at Baptist U, the learning is different. So I'm open to ideas of getting learning designers to help with the course, because it's not conventional lectures anymore. It's 10, 15 minutes, video clips, exercises, readings, things that blogs that the students have to reply to, answer, interact. So it's a completely different environment online than face-to-face. You know, you don't get to ask the question immediately. You have to delay your questions, write an email sometimes to the academic. So getting learning designers coming in for the online space, I think is important. And the marketing is obviously very different because the online experience for students, I guess, I've done 2 of my degrees by distance out of my several degrees. And I found that you really need to be self-motivated. So the online students, if we're looking at, is a different group of students where either for work or for whatever reasons, but they need to be really self-motivated. So it's a different group of students that you're recruiting, not the conventional type that full-time students, pre-experience. Usually get working people, usually you get students that are trying a degree to see how it feels while working or still trying to figure out. So it has to be quite dynamic, yet on an online world is different from face-to-face, and so is the recruitment.
Great, thank you, Angus. Sean Ferguson, if we come to you next, please.
Yeah, I think, there's, to build on a lot of the points that Erie and Angus said, it's a different age for sure. And I think, in our digital strategy, what we're seeing is a convergence between executive education or continuing studies and degree program education, for a couple of reasons. First, learning is becoming lifelong. And so while Angus, myself, and everyone here have gotten 2 or 3 degrees, right? That isn't going to be enough going forward, right? And people are going to need just-in-time, small, bite-sized, pieces of learning and education. And so I think in order to also get kind of economic scale off of some of the digital assets we build, we'll probably be using them in both executive education and in degree programs, right? And so, and as you start to have this convergence with content, I think you're also, and what we're seeing in our databases, we have a Salesforce database and a Slate database. Salesforce is for executive education, Slate is for the degree programs. We're seeing people are in both databases. And so as the content kind of converges and our strategies converge, what we're also going to see is a need to think about our marketing in a much more integrated way in order to not think about like them as 2 separate siloed things, but 2 kind of integrated kind of educational offerings that's part of one kind of school-oriented value proposition.
Sean, I wanted to ask you another question. We're tight for time, but just to ask about internationalism and how that's changing throughout the APAC region, because obviously you're at an institution with a strong international focus. Do you think that this will give institutions greater flexibility for collaboration going forward? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about people needing all sorts of top-up degrees and different types of qualifications. If universities can get their international strategies right, does that unlock a lot of potential in terms of really broadening out the type of students that they're dealing with, that they're attracting, and becoming a lot more competitive?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Alistair. I think what's going to happen is I think every university has to take on internationalization, because in a connected world, we're not going to be able to support a cost structure where we all can just be experts in everything, right? I think we're going to have to pick and choose our spots and be complementary with partners, maybe inside our region or outside of our region. And I think that's going to help deliver more value to students, right? And I think for, if you just listen to some of the things that, my research is on employability, employers, particularly in Malaysia, they want people who can work across the region, who have a cross-cultural savvy and that kind of thing. And it's you can teach that, but one of the big factors as far as developing that is providing an experience that's, international. And that doesn't just mean the students are international, but like if you look here, well, most of the people here are maybe from Malaysia, they got their degrees in different parts of the world, they worked in different parts of the world. And so having like this multidimensionality to internationalism, I think is one of the keys to attracting internationalism, right? And I think, tools like UniBuddy and some of these digital tools help us bring the world closer so that we can offer more international experiences, even if they're based here in Malaysia.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure we could probably do another hour just talking about internationalization, particularly in the APAC region. It's really interesting what's happening there at the moment. Sadly, we're coming up to time, so I'd just like to hand over to Sean from UniBuddy again, so he can tell you a little bit more about the next collaboration between Times Higher Education and UniBuddy that we've got in this series. Sean?
Yeah, thank you, Alistair, and thank you all so much for the panelists. This has been so insightful. It's been a great discussion, and like you said, Alistair, I do wish we could kind of carry on talking about this for several more hours. On that topic of, you know, more of this type of content in the future, UniBuddy is actually hosting our very first Asian summit on June 22nd. It's completely virtual. I think it's between about 11 and 5 p.m. Around about Singapore, Malaysian time zones. And we'll be sharing the best practices on all things similar to topics we just discussed today about admissions, marketing, recruitment, and the futures of that. And you'll be learning from, you know, hundreds of colleagues in the region who work in the same industry, as well as our guest speakers. So we will have the likes of Times Higher Education doing a talk there, as well as many others. So the invite for that, you should receive it in the next 24 hours. That will be for the panelists and the participants. But yeah, if you were, if you did like what we were discussing today, there's more to come on June 22nd. Thank you all so much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sean. We'll wrap up there. So I'd just like to thank all of our panelists for joining us today: Sean, Eri, Suling, Wing, Jessica, Azalea, Ida, Angus, and B. And thank you to everyone in the audience. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to answer all of your questions, but an on-demand version of this article will be available. An on-demand recording of this session will be available on the THE website, along with a summary article. So thank you all very much for taking part, and I hope that we see you again soon.